Well, as we move into this time of meditation, I invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so, or place your focus someplace in the sanctuary. And just move within. We had that beautiful statement of being this morning. So let's go a little deeper with that. And as I speak the words, I just invite you to open your hearts and your minds and your soul to taking those words in. God is all, invisible and visible, one presence, one mind, one power is all. The one that is all is perfect life, perfect love, perfect substance. I am an expression of God, an individualized expression of God. I am ever one with the perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. I am one with this perfect life, perfect love, perfect substance. In everything that I say, think, do, in every journey that I move on in this life, I am ever one with this perfect life, perfect love, perfect substance. Every journey that I am on is a journey to become ever more an expression of God's light, love, and perfection. So let's take that into the silence for just a moment. I am ever one with this perfect life, perfect love, perfect substance. No matter what my journey might be, I am this beautiful expression of the one presence, one power in the universe and in my life. God the good, and so it is. Amen.
It's good to be back with you. Had a great visit with my son, Justin, daughter-in-law, Nicole, and my 3 grandsons, Ian, Will, and Keegan, and a very energetic Labradoodle named Bandit. And just had a great time, but it's so good to be back and good to see you here today. Thank you so much for coming. This is a story probably several of you are familiar with concerning a man named Norman Cousins. For years, he was the editor of the Saturday Review. And he tells of being hospitalized with a rare, crippling disease called degenerative collagen illness. At the time, it was incurable. This was in 1964. When he was diagnosed as incurable, Cousins checked out of the hospital. Aware of the harmful effects that negative emotions can have on the body, Cousins reasoned the reverse was true. So he borrowed a movie projector. This is way before DVDs or even VCRs. He borrowed a movie projector. That's how you had to watch a movie at home in those days. He borrowed a movie projector and prescribed his own treatment, consisting of Marx Brothers movies and old Candid Camera reruns. It didn't take long for him to discover that 10 minutes of laughter provided 2 hours of pain-free sleep. Amazingly, his debilitating disease was eventually reversed. After the account of his victory appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine, Cousins received more than 3,000 letters from appreciative physicians throughout the world. And this led to even further study into a really long word called psychoneuroimmunology, the role that emotion plays in relating to illness and health. And it was discovered that what he did actually lowered cortisol and boosted the functioning of his immune system. I want to talk to you this morning about the healing journey, because Mr. Cousins' experience was an extraordinary example of the various ways that healing comes to us. He laughed himself into healing. Not bad. But I believe life is a healing journey. Now, not everyone sees life that way. You've heard of the famous saying, life's a bleep, then you die. Heard that one? In other words, life is a miserable enterprise that culminates ultimately in the sweet release of death. That's not how we see it, is it? That's not Unity's view of what life is. Unity's view is this: we are already complete and whole in divine mind, spirit, soul, and body. And life is continual awakening and discovery of the healing and wholeness already granted to us. That's how Unity sees it. That's how I see it. How about you? Dr. Albert Schweitzer said each patient carries his own doctor inside of him. They come to us not knowing that truth. We are at our best when we give the doctor who resides within each patient a chance to go to work. And this is consistent with Unity's view that life is lived from inside out, not outside in. Isn't that true? And that everything we need, all the goodness and joy and love of life, is already resident in here. It's a matter of discovery. And I believe healing is the same way. We discover healing throughout our journey of life if we're looking to discover it, if we're searching for it. Some people are not. They expect life to continue to be miserable, go down and down and down, and ultimately, you're out. I remember when I was at Costco not long ago and had that incident that I had to repent for. And I said, you have to overlook me. I just turned 65. She said, so it's downhill from here on. I said, no, I don't think that. But there are episodes, you have to deal with. But I believe life is a healing journey. And interestingly, Unity began as a healing ministry. It wasn't intended as a denomination early on. It was looked on by Mr. Fillmore, Mrs. Fillmore, as a chance to share what they discovered about the inward power to heal to all kinds of churches and faiths. That's how Unity began, as a healing ministry. And I saw this marvelous insight into how healing is so varied in its manifestations. I like to call healing avenues or healing channels. How many know there are many channels and avenues that healing comes to us through? And to get hung up on any one, I think, is short-sighted on our part. Carolyn is a great case in point. Carolyn had worked for FedEx for, at that time, about 20 years, shoving freight on and off airplanes. And in the process got pretty strong and muscular. And I don't give her much trouble to this day. But she did develop some serious problems with her back. And I met her about the time she was ready to get herself another nerve block. And she asked, would I go with her, please? And of course I did. But it dawned on me, this was not making her better. All it was doing was masking the symptom of pain. And it wasn't improving her condition at all. And so I began to pray, and seek God about how healing could come to my wife. And I got this sense, this inward sense, that she would be healed through the wisdom of the East. And I didn't really know what that meant. I thought, what does that mean, yoga, something? She'd never been a yoga practitioner. And not long after that, I talked to a man. I knew he was a retired circuit court judge. His name was Steve Hornsby. And I was mentioning to him, about the struggles Carolyn has with her back. And he said, has she considered acupuncture? I said, Carolyn and needles? I don't know, Steve. He said, well, it's made a world of difference with me. So I proposed it to her. And at that point, she was pretty well ready, whatever it took. Witch doctor, whatever. And so we went to a acupuncturist, a lady acupuncturist who was also a neurologist, and very skilled, very knowledgeable. And it wasn't long before Carolyn started experiencing some enormous improvement in her condition. She was going like 3 times a week, then it dropped down to once a week, and then once a month, and then ultimately as needed. And to this day, her condition is extraordinary. She actually experienced healing in her back, not just a blockage of pain. And it helped me to appreciate the many and varied ways healing comes to us. And she's made incredible progress, and to this day, her back is in extraordinarily good shape. No cold pack every night like she used to do. Greater freedom from stiffness and pain, a sense of real improvement and real healing, and so thankful that God directed us to that aspect of wisdom from the East to bring healing to people. I want to look at a major factor in our healing journey from the book of John, chapter 5, an incident in the life of Jesus. So now in Jerusalem by the sheep gate, there's a pool called in the Hebrew Bethesda, which has 5 porticos. In these lay many ill, blind, lame, and paralyzed people. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he'd been there a long time, he said to him, do you want to be made well? The ill man answered him, Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I'm making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me. Now the legend was that there was an angel that hung around that pool, and from time to time the angel would stir up the water. And whoever was first into the pool when the water stirred up got healed. But he said, I got nobody to help me into the pool. So how am I going to get well? Jesus said to him, stand up, take your mat, and walk. At once the man was made well. He took up his mat and began to walk. Now, Bethesda, or the pool of Bethesda, in the revealing word, Mr. Fillmore tells us that it metaphysically represents the house of mercy or house of healing. It represents the realization in consciousness that our life is being continually purified, healed, and made new by the activity of mind. And so when Jesus asked this man who'd been there 38 years, paralyzed 38 years, do you want to be made well? Seemed like an obvious question, doesn't it? But maybe not. I like the way the King James words it, the King James Version. Will you be made whole? Will you? Seemingly an obvious question, but I think it's a question that from time to time we need to ask ourselves. Will you be made whole? Sometimes I ask myself that. Hey, Mick, will you be made whole? Mr. Fillmore says the will is the executive faculty of the mind, the determining factor in humanity. What humanity wills or decrees comes to pass in their experience. And there are those, you may know some, who have determined that life cannot be a healing journey for them. It's a journey of progressive and continual illness and ultimately death. Now, this man in the story had been afflicted for a long time, 38 years. I wonder how he got there every day. Apparently, somebody dropped him off on their way to work because he was there every day for 38 years. This was his social interaction. He hung around the pool. When he got there morning, hey, Fran, hey, Rick, hey, Abdullah, see you're here too. 38 years he'd been coming to the pool of Bethesda. And in that time, you got to believe that the guy just got used to it. Isn't that right? These were the people he knew, he hung with, and he hung around the pool thinking, boy, if I could just get in there. He'd made up his mind, this was life for him. And amazingly, this question could be posed well to many people. Will you be made whole? There's an illness, a mental illness called factitious disorder, previously called Munchausen syndrome, in which someone deceives others by appearing sick, purposely getting sick, or by self-injury. A rare condition, yet there are those that seek sympathy and attention through their illness. To these people, the question could well be posed, will you be made whole? And there, though, if they were honest, no, I like the attention I get from my illness. I like that people pay attention to me and fuss over me, and I want that. I want to complain to them about how sick I am. It's my conversation. I remember a lady, this lady kept going on and on about her illness, details about her various surgeries and the current state of her illness, and she said, all right, we've heard, we're sorry you're sick, hope you feel better, let's talk about something else. That's a good way to deal with that. Because there are those that seek something they gain, they feel like they're gaining out of a life spent in illness. But the question should be posed, will you be made whole? And let me urge you, don't get too hung up on the methods. When Steve first said that about acupuncture and needles, I don't know, man. But don't get too hung up on the methods. This guy was hung up on the method, wasn't he? Look what he said. Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water's stirred up. While I'm making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me. He said, this is the way we do it at the pool of Bethesda, Jesus. Didn't you get the brochure on your way in? It tells you right there, when the angel stirs up the pool, the first one in gets well. You obviously didn't read that. That's the way we do it here. He was hung up on the method. Isn't that true? How many know it's not wise to get hung up on one method? Any method. Be it, as Butterworth said, medication or meditation. Don't get hung up on either one. I knew a guy, bless his stubborn heart. He had made up his mind the only way you should be made well is through faith and prayer. So he never sought out medical care. He didn't have routine screenings, which he should have had because he had a severe family history of colon cancer. Guess what he died of? Because I don't need medical science. I'm doing it my way, like this guy here. This is the way we do it. And he died prematurely, left behind his wife and his children and his friends, and years of life he could have had ahead of him because he was so stubborn that you got to do it this way. How many know we're unwise when we do that? Is there only one way to wholeness? I think there are a number of avenues, don't you? A number of channels. Let me tell you a big one. This is an exciting one, diet and exercise. Oh boy, we love that one. But it's a valid means of healing and wholeness, isn't it? It said that the top 3 preventable causes for 44% of cancer deaths: smoking, too much alcohol, and a healthy BMI. These are things that would cut cancer deaths by 44%, almost half. This is an amazing thing to consider, isn't it? That how we treat our bodies determines how well our bodies will ultimately be. And it varies with the individual. Some people, their genetics are more inclined that they can abuse their body more and they're tougher. But not everybody's like that, and probably not most of us are like that. I remember a lady I met at a friend of mine at his church This lady that stood before me appeared to be a very slender, fit lady in her mid to late 60s. And she proudly showed me a photo of a woman that didn't look like her at all. This woman appeared to be around 250 pounds heavier, and it was her. And she said, I lost all this weight. At one time, I took 17 different medications a day. She said, now I'm down to 2. Because of intense determination to regulate her diet and exercise. And a storm was brewing outside, I noticed, as we were leaving. She said, I got to go for my fitness walk now. I said, it looks like a tornado out there. She said, I never let the weather determine, whether I'm going to exercise or not. I said, well, that's very admirable, but bear in mind, if you get struck by lightning, it could undo all your good work, just saying. But she was fanatical about it because it had transformed her health. Diet and exercise is a key avenue of healing, isn't it? And I could do better with vegetables, I know that. I've shied away from them all my life. But I need to consume more of them. Basically, drink more water, eat fruits and vegetables, exercise, in moderation. These are all good health habits that contribute to healing in our bodies. Isn't that true? Acupuncture, as I've already mentioned. 3,000 years old, this has been around. And yet still Medicare won't cover it. 3,000 years! Who does it say? 3,000 years? We don't need that. And people have been benefiting from all that time. From the Buddhist East, not the Christian West, this avenue of healing came. That's the cool thing about unity. We honor various channels and avenues of faith, of belief, and of healing. Isn't that true? It's cool. You often wonder how people discover stuff. Like, who was it that said, let me stick these big needles in you and you'll feel better? Who comes up with that? I always think about, who discovered eggs were good to eat. I think that thing falling out of that chicken's rear end would be great with toast. Who comes up with this stuff? I don't know, but it happens. Isn't that true? Not long ago, I met one of my heroes, Dr. Gary Simmons, wrote the book, The Eye of the Storm. Got to meet him and his wife, spent some time with them. And he shared with me how he was healed of melanoma, advanced melanoma, through medical cannabis. Fascinating story. He said he had tumors all in his body. And his doctor assured him, best we can do is keep you as comfortable as we can until the end. A grim, diagnosis without a doubt. And he began to wonder if medical cannabis might help him. And he went to a cannabis store. And there were all these young people working there, piercings and tattoos, very into the scene. And he asked a girl, said, you got anything for cancer? She looked at him, scribbled something on a sticky note, handed it to him. It was a contact number of a particular fella who had experienced healing from cancer through medical cannabis. And he got a little insight from him on how to take the plants, distill the THC down. I said, how'd you know what dosage to use? He said, experimentation, man. He said, I doubled the dose daily, stayed high a lot, but said I went back to my doctor and I said, I believe these tumors are going away. And the doctor, yeah, sure they are. Yeah, right. And he kept pressing him, said, I'm feeling better, and I can tell there's been change. He said, just essentially to shut you up, I'll give you another scan, even though it's premature. He looked at it and said, your tumors have gone away. He said, I've tried to tell you. He said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And so to this day, he's completely healed, completely cured of melanoma. He does a weekly treatment now, just a weekly treatment of medical cannabis. How many know that's an avenue, a channel of healing that we need to be open to? Isn't that true? So don't get too hung up on the methods. Be open to what method Spirit reveals to you. Jesus said in Matthew 13, and he said to them, therefore every scribe who's become a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. How many know there are new things to discover? And there are old things that are still reliable. Isn't that right? We need the treasures of the new and the old. New discoveries, we should be open to those. And all of these channels and avenues are part of our healing journey. How many know we can all recommend things that have helped us? And you know, if something's really helped you, how many know you want somebody else in on it, don't you? Hey, you got to try this. Yeah, sure I will. And they may or may not. But we know what makes a difference for us. A healing journey, the healing of the emotions is essential in our healing journey. People that say, all my relationships end in disaster. Why? Because there's a need for emotional healing in you, see. I'm always angry. Why is that? Will you be made whole? I'm always afraid. Will you be made whole? That's the question we must continually ask ourselves. Will you be made whole? As I often say, some people define themselves by their pain, and I don't judge them. There are people who have experienced pain I cannot even begin to comprehend. And yet I believe with all my heart, and I always will, we need not define ourselves by our pain, but by our healing. But we must ask ourselves, what changes do I need to make? And there are many therapies we can utilize. Medicine and surgery, still valid ways healing comes to us. Energy therapies, like we're preparing, to launch, Reiki. Adam Miller came to us. He has an energy healing ministry. How many remember Roger Miller, the singer? Anybody remember him? I'm fascinated by him. I've been reading a book about him, my father used to love him, and I grew up listening to his songs. And I've just really started looking into his life. Fascinating thing, I don't think Roger Miller is any kin to Adam Miller, but it's interesting. They said Roger had a healing gift of energy. And from time to time, he would put his hand on a friend that requested it, and so you could feel it. His hand just began getting extremely hot, and said my condition would improve after Roger would keep his hand on me. That's an avenue, healing energy. Energy is another therapy, another method or channel. Faith and prayer. And then there's one that I'm really excited about I wanted to share with you this morning that I'd like to launch here in our church. It's called soaking prayer. Anybody ever heard of soaking prayer? No? It was originally, the term was coined by a Catholic priest of the Dominican order named Father Francis McNutt. And he was active in the 1970s. And he began to see that if he would spend an extended period of time with those that were sick, that he saw some extraordinary results of improvement in their conditions. Let me quote to you from him. He said, soaking prayer involves immersing a sick person for an extended period of time in healing prayer. Over the years, I've come to believe that about 2 out of 3 sick people can be cured, provided we really take time to pray with them. He said, I find that when people minister individually and spend time praying with the sick, results dramatically improve. Perhaps this is why Jesus spent so much of his time ministering to the sick one by one. Local churches and prayer groups then have a special opportunity to utilize this power of soaking prayer. And when I discovered this, in looking at the history of Unity, they used to do this all the time. Extended times of prayer for those that were battling illness. They would sometimes stay all night to pray with people that were in need of healing in their bodies and saw extraordinary results. And so I was intrigued by this, and I decided to launch it in the church I was in there in Memphis, and saw some marvelous results. There was a lady early on, she said, and I told them, if you start feeling better, don't deviate from your doctor's course of treatment. Go to your doctor and have him verify this. And a lady, she was able to give up her CPAP machine after spending some time in soaking prayer. Another guy, Jim, when he started, he was on a walker. But after several weeks of soaking prayer, he said, I don't need my walker anymore. I feel so much stronger and better. And I was very encouraged by this. And so I got to, praying about, is this something, that I can offer, to our congregation here? And I believe it's time to do that. And this is just one avenue of healing, not the only one. You have your doctor, you have the course of treatment, continue to honor that. But this is another avenue that could bring healing and that I want to share. And I want to have the first soaking session on Wednesday, May the 13th. It's a sample soak. So you get an idea of what this is about, sample soak. And it's going to be May 13th from 11 to 12 for an hour. We ask that you stay at least an hour if you can. And spend some time. I'm going to be the only soaker starting out. And whoever comes will be soakees. But ultimately, I want to train other soakers. So we'll have more soakers and, to help the soakees. But I want to invite you to that sample soak. Wednesday, May 13th from 11 to 12. And if you're battling illness or know someone that is, please bring them. Say, what are you going to do to me? It's very simple. We're going to sit in the presence. We're going to pray and just wait in the divine presence and trust for healing to ensue. Simple as that. So I hope you can join us, and you're certainly welcome. So this question rings out across the centuries. It still rings out today. Will you be made whole? Will you? Turn to your neighbor and say, will you be made whole? Because how many know we're all on the journey of discovery, aren't we? There's in all of us there's incompletion. And we say, all right, so we're continually open to what will make us whole in our physical bodies, in our emotions, in all of it. Because life is a healing journey. Stand with me if you would. Let's make our affirmation in closing. Repeat after me if you'd be so kind. I am on a healing journey. I will be made whole. I am open to channels both new and old. My life is a healing journey. I love it. Bless you. You can have your seats. Thank you.